Good morning, everyone. It's so great to have so many of you join us today. We have 47 and counting faces on this call, so thank you so much for joining us today. Today, our webinar is titled Implementing Technology at My Nonprofit, How to Get Started. So my name is Hua Ping, and I'm the delivery manager at Belmar Consulting Group, and we'll be facilitating today's webinar. We have two exciting guests today who I will be introducing in just a moment. If you don't know who Belmar Consulting Group is, we are a Salesforce.org impact partner that specializes in the implementation of Salesforce, specifically for nonprofit organizations. So like most of you gathered here, I chose a career working for and serving nonprofits, wanting to make an impact in people's lives. And we can really support others at Belmar by helping nonprofits achieve their organizational mission by providing support through many ways, such as webinars like this. And to help us get us there, I'm excited about our discussion today to help your organization begin your transformational journey. So before I introduce our two guests today, just a couple of housekeeping items to share. So we want to hear from you throughout the webinar. So please post your questions within the Zoom chat, which you will find in the Zoom control panel at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to answer as many questions during our Q&A period at the end of the webinar. And for the best viewing experience through Zoom, I recommend you view the webinar in speaker view. So on the top right of your screen, if you click on the view mode, you can choose speaker or gallery. So I recommend to choose speaker there. So we are going to mute the lines as well, and we ask that you remain on mute throughout the duration of the webinar, just for the benefits of everyone participating. And last but not least, we will be recording this webinar, or it is being recorded already, and it will be available on our YouTube channel following this event. So with that being said, I'm excited to welcome two of our guests, one joining us from Salesforce.org, Bernardo Sandoval, and we have Belmar CEO Scott Billows joining us. So Bernardo and Scott, would you please give a quick introduction to yourself? Bernardo, let's start with you.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. It's first, let me just say it's an honor to be here with this amazing team from Belmar. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I look forward to this conversation. My experience includes for-profit and nonprofits. I served as a CIO in a Fortune 6 healthcare organization where we scaled the organization from 650 million to about 980. It was driven a lot by technology. And then I transitioned into the NGO sector where I joined International Justice Mission. And we built a very special platform. It's the first of its type. It was selected for the keynote at Dreamforce, and it just was an incredible experience, and look forward to talking more about it throughout the presentation today.
Great. Well, thanks, Hua Ping, for the introduction, and Bernardo, thank you so much for joining us today, and to everyone else who's on this webinar, thanks so much for joining. My name is Scott Billows, as Hua Ping introduced. Founder and CEO of Belmar. I am extremely passionate about our mission, which is serving the mission of nonprofit organizations. And I'm really excited about this conversation today. A little bit about myself. I live in Vancouver. I am on a nonprofit board that I'm very passionate about. It's a local food bank that I've been serving at for the last, it's got to be 10 plus years now, and really just love getting involved in the community, and really excited about this conversation today. So with that, Hua Ping, I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bernardo. Thanks, Scott. So just a quick introduction to the topic at hand. So just a bit of a brief on my side is that being on the delivery team, there's many times that we've encountered nonprofits that have many questions on what really is involved in a digital transformation project. And so even though our webinar says how to implement technology at my nonprofit, really we want to understand what is involved when we say technology, or even maybe a better word could be a digital transformation. It's not often just a technology project, but anytime that technology is involved, it involves more than just bringing in a consultant or consultants to implement that solution, but really is a partnership between the client team and the consulting team to build a solution that fits the needs of your organization. So I won't give too many spoilers today, but today we really want to take you on a journey to really understand what goes into that conversation, even prior to bringing in a consulting team to implement Salesforce or whatever that tech solution is. So today will be a journey, and it will be a conversation that Bernardo and Scott will take us through. So to kick us off with our first question today, Bernardo, Scott, how do these conversations typically start? How does a nonprofit get started in their digital transformation?
Great. Well, Bernardo, why don't I jump in and open it up? So, we as a consulting organization, we are introduced to clients that are, or let's call them prospective clients, organizations that are looking to make a change within their organization. And, oftentimes the conversation starts with, there's a problem that they're trying to overcome. That may be an efficiency problem. It may be a technology problem. It may be, a business challenge that they're facing that they are perceiving can be addressed and solved with technology. So often it starts with the identification of one or more problems that they're working to overcome. And Bernardo, I'll pass it to you.
Sure. And as Scott was saying, like, you have a business unit executive, functional unit leader that says, I have problem X, Y, Z. I can't get the reports that I need, or the different challenges that come up. And yet in those conversations, that's where the conversation may start. But it seems that many times IT is the one that's left holding the bag and working to deliver the solution without the partnership from the business. And those are some of the topics that we're going to talk about today. It's the difficult stuff that's required before actually focusing on the actual technology to ensure that you have the budget, you have the buy-in, you have the support, so that IT is not trying to drive 3 boulders uphill in trying to drive a technology or a solution without the actual business unit and the business sponsor who actually said this was a problem to begin with.
That's great. And Bernardo, just to piggyback back on that, we may have organizations represented here today that are large enterprise, and we may have some that are, a much smaller organization, and not everybody on this call may have an IT department or an IT director that is responsible for solving these problems with technology. And so regardless of where your organization is at, regardless of the size of team that you have, we tend to see that these conversations get started internally, first by the recognizing and identification of there being a problem. And so as we go through the conversation today, we're going to give you some ideas in terms of how you can take this problem you've identified and work to a solution. So again, regardless of size, we're really going to try to address this from a holistic point of view so that everybody can benefit from the conversation.
So yeah, just really on that note, Scott, so for both small and larger organizations alike, what would you recommend once someone has identified that there is a problem, something that needs fixing, maybe there's trends in the larger landscape that we need to account for, like even the pandemic where everything is becoming digitized. How do you, I guess, turn that problem into something that you can build a case for with the larger organization?
Yeah, that's a great question, Hua Ping, and I think the best way to define that is internally within your organization. It's identifying, it's writing down what these problem statements are, and it's beginning the journey internally of building a business case for why it makes sense to overcome these problems. And as it was referenced earlier in this conversation, not all problems are always best solved with technology. There may be other solutions, there may be other ways to overcome a challenge. Today, we're going to focus a little bit more on the technology side, but I would say the first step is really in beginning to build a business case internally for why and how you would begin to look at a solution.
Yeah, and the business case, right? Like that's so important, and oftentimes we miss that as technology leaders or involved in technology. The business case serves as the glue, the foundation of the decision that's taking place. And a business case doesn't have to be overly complex. And it depends on the size of the initiative and the complexity of the initiative that's being proposed in an organization. But this principle applies whether you're a really small organization or a really large organization. And the purpose of a business case is to take some basic high-level requirements. What are some business challenges that absolutely need to be solved by this? It doesn't have to be comprehensive. It's just the start of a conversation. Who's going to be the business unit leader, the functional unit leader that's going to partner with IT if it's a cross-functional initiative where there's transformation or change that's happening in a business unit? And then having that inside of a business case, you get agreement around at the leadership level, within the organization to say, these are the things that we're going to work on. These are the things that we're going to accomplish together. And that business case really anchors the decision that's being made and the value of that decision. So it's no longer just about the cost, right? It's easy to say, oh, this initiative is going to cost $200,000. But that doesn't convey, it's not appropriate to measure technology initiatives based on just the cost. It's the value. What is the value of doing this? What is that return on investment? What does the organization save by doing this? And there's qualitative and quantitative metrics that can be used at a very basic level. This is not some McKinsey endeavor. At a very basic level, capturing those things, getting alignment and agreement, and that begins the kickoff or the initiation of whatever the initiative might be.
What are some examples of those qualitative and quantitative measures that you've seen before, Bernardo? Sure.
So ones that I commonly use, especially when I'm brand new in an organization and don't have enough detail, is understanding from a quantitative perspective, what is the number of hours that it takes to produce X, Y, or Z? And then taking those number of hours and then creating an average labor cost and saying, this is how much it costs to actually do this from a labor perspective. That's a very simple one to use. Qualitatively, it's like, how is this going to enhance our reputation? Or how is this going to enhance our internal operations? Or how is this going to get our data out in a simplified manner? Whatever those qualitative things are can also be added inside of the business case. But approaching it from a quantitative and qualitative is just, how are you going to tell the story of what the value is? It can't be measured purely in a quantitative fashion. Quantitative is usually dollars and cents. What's the value of actually doing this thing? And IT can't own that. If this is an initiative that's being driven by a functional business unit, IT works in partnership with the business unit, but the business unit leader is responsible for developing what the value of the initiative is or the project is. Scott, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think you've said that well, Bernardo, in terms of just how you define this. Another recommendation that I would make is it's bringing others within the organization into the discussion. So you're getting other ideas, getting other minds around the problem that you've identified, and how you might work together as a partner within the organization to overcome the challenge. One of the things that we see often on the actual implementation side, so once a customer has made the decision to do a project, is there are often many stakeholders within the organization who have a perspective. They have a view of what success looks like. And so defining that during a project, while it can be done, we see it better done prior to a project starting. So really getting internal alignment and getting the team in agreement in terms of, by doing this project, we are going to collectively accomplish X. So the alignment is one that we really want to stress as a really key indicator of success, regardless of which direction you go and what solutions that you end up exploring.
When you say alignment, kind of triggers this word in my mind of vision. And like whenever I think about technology, it's like, what is that end goal? What is that vision that we envision, for lack of a better word, seeing? So I guess the next question that I have here is really, how do you, I guess, talk about vision within an organization, and how do you talk about that in the context of technology?
I think that there's all kinds of ways. Some of the ones that I'm going to talk about are approaches that I've taken. I always ensure that the business unit leader is there, right there with me. Sure, I'm going to talk about the transformation, the change, and what have you, but it's support. Technology is an enabler of the strategy or the objective. So what is the vision of the business unit leader? And it's important that there's that partnership and agreement so that the messaging isn't just coming from the technology side of the house. We can emphasize it, we can re-emphasize, we can create it, we can create an environment to talk about it, but IT on its own cannot just take responsibility for delivering something and getting vision buy-in when the vision and the problem statement came from the business unit. So it requires that partnership together to be able to get that buy-in all across the board.
Got any other thoughts there?
I think Bernardo summarized that well. So I would just tend to agree with what he has said in terms of that buy-in, that alignment. It's so key that the organization is moving in the same direction, and so that's sage advice, Bernardo, in terms of how best to approach that.
Thanks, Scott. So I guess that leads us really nicely into our next question, which is, how do we get board buy-in? What is the process to actually getting started there?
Yeah, well, why don't I tackle this one first? So board buy-in. So we're making some assumptions in this conversation that those who are participating on this webinar have a board that is perhaps works with the executive, works with the business around budgeting and approval of funds. And one of the things that we really endorse is having the board participate in the journey, identifying early and communicating early with your board the ideas that you have for how the organization can change. And Bernardo spoke to some of the qualitative and quantitative measures that that you can put together to build a business case. But we find that engaging early with your board, explaining what's going on in the business, communicating the vision for where the organization is headed is really key. And we've seen many cases where very late in the process, the board is brought into the discussion, and the board often have questions. There may be certain governance that exists within your organization that require, for example, getting multiple quotes from vendors. And if that's not well understood, and if that process is not followed, it can lead to project delays. It can lead to just internal swirl that gets created around trying to move an initiative forward and inadvertently getting blocked due to governance. So we really recommend that you engage with your board, you bring them into the discussion, and you take them on that journey so that when it comes time for an approval, which often is the case, the board will approve an expenditure. They've already participated in the journey. So.
Mm-hmm. And just a small thing to add, and Scott covered that so well. As working in IT and working in technology is not easy. Like oftentimes what happens is we're quick to say yes to an initiative, but that business case, that's where IT gets to say, this is what I need to be successful. What is required? Not just quickly jumping and saying, yes, I can do it. And especially in the NGO sector, it's even more prevalent than what I've seen in the for-profit, is because of the mission and our love for the mission, and we're in this to make a change or social impact. We're very quick to say yes, and then be privately frustrated. We're not resourced, we don't have X, we don't have Y, we don't have Z, can't get the people I need. Up front, doing the homework and establishing that business case from an IT perspective, this is what I need to be able to be successful. I want to tie that business case all the way to the executive team and to the board, because that business case is what I would use to create that alignment all the way across all levels of the organization. When I say all levels, it goes all the way to the board to say, this is what the value of doing this is. This is what IT needs to be successful, and not just quickly saying yes because we love and want to just be Superman or Superwoman or Captain Marvel nowadays, because like she's incredible, to be able to do those things. And that's really important. And that I say that for all IT leaders, having been there, done that, suffered through those situations. We are not victims. There is a place where we can have a seat at the table or force a seat at the table to get the resources that we need to be able to be successful in whatever initiative is being put before us and we're being asked to do.
Awesome. Thanks, Bernardo. Yeah, it's so important to get that board buy-in and executive buy-in, because it really will support us, support the projects and support the initiative down the road. And the board is just like one aspect of it. They're the initial individuals who will be approving the project. But then on the flip side, there's also the internal team. The internal team will be affected directly, probably more directly than the board, by the changes that will be happening within the organization. Maybe their day-to-day jobs will change in systems. So how do you generate internal buy-in?
Bernardo, why don't you start?
Cool. Internal buy-in, it's important when starting this type of a transformation, is understanding the business culture of the organization. What does that mean? Who's going to be for the initiative? Who's going to be against the initiative? the technology in the technology piece or the technology solution or architecting that is actually usually easier than navigating the people whose jobs are going to change, right? And getting and ensuring that there's that buy-in up front through the business case, because that should establish what the value of this thing is to the whole organization. Having a single unified messaging from the business and IT in terms of what this is going to do for X, Y, Z. And then approaching the training and adoption and taking that into consideration so that we can create alignment at all levels of the organization. I'll share a blunt example. There was an organization where they will prove you wrong across the board, multi-country, passionate, smart individuals. And I was like, I went to a bunch of these offices and directly told them, I don't think the program can get it together and really align on data definitions and create alignment on processes, knowing that that would trigger the proof. Oh yes, we can, because you're saying we can. And so understanding those nuanced approaches and business culture of that exist, and then creating a strategy to be able to deal with them is really important on the front end. You don't have to be ProSci certified, helpful, but just understanding who's going to be for it, who's going to be against it. Why should people be support it? What is the benefit? Conveying and communicating those things, not just from IT, but from business and IT, makes all the difference in the world. And by the way, on that initiative, we had like 86% approval in terms of our change management and adoption in an organization that each field office had come up with their own processes. But it was beautiful to be able to see that. But we did our homework up front on all that. Scott?
Yeah, that's great, Bernardo. And I think just to pick up on a phrase you've used, which is change management. When I think of buy-in, getting internal buy-in, we're addressing this prior to actually starting an initiative to overcome and solve the business problem that's been identified. But there's never a better time than right at the start to begin thinking about and communicating with the broader team. Now, depending on the size of your organization, if I'll use an example of a smaller organization. If there's a smaller group of individuals on your team, it's communicating with them what impact this change is going to have. And I recommend identifying both the positive impact, but also what changes are going to come. So when we think of change management, I often will think of what impact does this have to me as an individual. I'm familiar with a certain set of tools that I use every day, and I'm hearing that those are going to change. What impact does that have to my role in the organization? What impact does that have to me performing the job that I've been hired to do? And what support is going to be provided from the organization to transition me from an older set of tools to a newer set of tools? And so I really challenge you to think about just that communication and that story that you're telling internally within the organization. And we spoke earlier about taking the board on a journey. I think it's equally important and arguably even more important to take the team, the organization, on a journey together. And so it's a lot easier to have people who are for you and supporting the initiative than it is to, of course, have those that are questioning and bumping up against the great work that you or your team might be doing to advance the organization and overcome a challenge. So one thing that I've seen and I've observed in just a few organizations is that they will identify one person who is really responsible for communicating a story, talking about why the change needs to happen, what the timeline is going to be, what the steps are along the journey. And there's, of course, with all the tools that we have now today, shooting a video, sending an email with a link to a document that lays out a really rough timeline. I would challenge you to really think about over communicating with your team or your stakeholders what impact and what benefit this is going to have, and ultimately what change is going to be expected of them, so that they can begin preparing themselves for this initiative.
Yeah, that's awesome, Scott. And I think like in the very beginning, we talked about that business case, and I hope it's clear just in how often that business case, that value of the business case comes into play when getting board buy-in, getting internal buy-in, and really taking the whole organization on a journey and getting that alignment across the whole organization as well. Yeah, that's super good, Scott and Bernardo. Moving on to our next topic. So now we've gotten the board buy-in, we've got an internal buy-in. How do you identify possible solutions to that pain point, or to achieve that business case?
There's so many different approaches, right? Now you can start by asking Google, like a lot of people start that way. Hopefully your research goes farther than that. Once the problems are identified, being able to talk to different colleagues across the NGO sector to find a partner to engage with, to understand what are the different, I always look at Gartner and say, okay, what is Gartner saying is in that quadrant? What are the solutions that apply to this particular technology problem? Those are all different ways to be able to approach and say, okay, how are we going to organize ourselves to say, are we going to look at, in one particular example, I was looking at Salesforce versus .NET. All of my previous experience was telling me that the use case was a .NET, not really Salesforce. And but did an RFP and went through the detail and figured out that no, Salesforce could actually solve these very complicated use cases. But having an understanding of what are the solutions that are available for the problems that are being stated is really helpful to begin to orient and narrow down the potential range of partners or consultants or technologies that can be looked at. And these principles that we're talking about, they apply to any type of platform, any type of change, any type of a digital initiative that's taking place in an organization. The principles don't change.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation, Bernardo. And when I think of what you've shared, not all organizations, not all of those represented on this call today may have to go through an RFP process. And so I'm going to tackle this prior to an RFP, if that's required, or in the case that it's not. How can you go about identifying solutions? So one great example is to participate in events like this. Today we are referencing a tool called Salesforce, but Salesforce is not always a fit for every organization out there. So really working to educate yourself and your organization on what are the options that are available in the market. I think of a few examples of communicating with like organizations. So if I referenced a food bank earlier in this talk. If you are from a food bank, talk to other food banks, understand what they're using, and ask questions around when was that solution that you implemented actually, when did it go live? What are the benefits you've gained from that solution compared to the former solutions that you were working with? So talking to colleagues, talking to other like organizations to just try to understand what are they really defining as the best of breed solution in the market. There's a lot of benefit in going with the crowd, if you will, and that phrase may or may not resonate. But if you're together as a group of organizations implementing similar solutions, there's a lot of synergies that you can benefit from. And another example of how you go about identifying is start with a broader list of vendors. Ask those vendors to give you examples of other customers. Talk to those customers that they provide as references, and ask tough questions. Our experience is that most of our clients that we've worked with, they only get to do this once, maybe every 10 years. For some, it's once every 20 years. And so you want to pick the right solution, and you want to really have others around you being supportive of that solution that you're selecting. So those are just a couple of ideas in terms of how you go about identifying. There are today more and more applications, more and more vendors out there who are purporting to be able to help a nonprofit with their common use cases. And so just the last, recommendation that I would make when it comes to identifying is think broadly too. Think of if there's one particular program or business unit that is identifying that they need to make a change. An option is to go after what we would consider to be a point solution. So let's just use fundraising as an example. You can find a multitude of fundraising tools on the market, but if you implement that tool and it can't scale to other functional business units, you may end up with a siloed set of tools, which is a real challenge for many organizations when it comes to reporting and sharing of information across the organization. So our recommendation would be to identify solutions in the market that allow you to address more than just the problem that you first identified, and can scale across the organization. And in this particular case, the tools that we work with in Salesforce certainly can provide that. But as I shared earlier, we're not here to promote Salesforce today. It's more to share insight from what we've learned in working with all of these amazing organizations.
For that, yeah. So really, as Scott mentioned, you take all the necessary steps to find the right solution for your organization. Then you choose the right solution. And yeah, really the next step is now you're, starting on your technology journey or your digital transformation journey. And one of the areas that I touched on in the very beginning of this is the idea of partnership. When you choose a consulting company or choose a solution, and maybe you're getting support from someone else to implement it for you, the idea of partnership comes up. And it's not just them coming in and poof, there's magic pixie dust and suddenly there's a solution there, but really it's a journey that now you and that consulting company are taking together. So I would love for Bernardo and Scott for you to touch on just what does that partnership look like? We've seen like this journey that we're taking with like the internal board members of the internal team, now with the consulting team. So now what does this type of relationship look like?
Pixie dust, it's one of my favorite terms, in that it seems that many times there's a sense that if we just buy the technology like pixie dust, it'll solve our business problems. When in reality, a technology without appropriate business process only exacerbates the problem and makes it more expensive. And so getting that alignment on those business processes up front is so crucial in ensuring success later on and down the road. And so in terms of just the partnership and accountability, it's crucial that there's not a pixie dust culture at any level, from executives to mid leaders to whoever's being involved. There's not a sense of, oh, the partner's going to just automatically solve all of our problems. The technology, Salesforce, .NET, whatever, is not just going to on its own solve our problems. It's like saying, like, when I was in an MBA program writing a term paper, I could just buy Microsoft Word and that should just spit out my term papers for me. I wish, oh my goodness, I wish it could do that. But that pixie dust mindset, it doesn't work, right? Technology, it's people, process, then the technology. You got to make sure you have the right people to develop the right processes so you can have the right technology, and ensuring that there's accountability with your partner, ensuring that the business is making available operational subject matter experts to the partner so that the right business logic can be created, so that the right term paper can be created and written and actually get an A, right? Like, and then the technology is enabled by that. But creating that partnership is crucial. And it's not, we're just going to bring on a partner and they're going to just solve it all. That alignment and that accountability, both from the technology team and from the business unit team, is required with a partner to ensure that the partner can be successful. And Scott, you have way more powerful thoughts than me on this.
Well, I'll try to share a few of those, Bernardo. I appreciate the endorsement there. I think in all seriousness, as an implementation organization, so an organization that partners with our customers to help them implement these solutions that they've chosen, we see success where there is alignment up and down the organization, both with our clients, but also internally on our side. And the one thing that I can almost give you a guarantee on is that as you go through a technology project, there will be surprises, there will be challenges, there will be things that perhaps were not completely understood on the part of the implementer, but that's also true of the client. And so it's getting the framework in place to quickly address these types of challenges that arise and overcome those, and having alignment across the organization to be able to address these as they come up. And Bernardo referenced having the right people on the bus, or having the right people working together. That's also another really important piece of this. And so for organizations that may be a little smaller and they don't have a large team, they may not have an IT team to help support this. It is thinking about this as a partnership with the implementer, and it's getting the right people on your team as project team members. So you've got an internal champion, you've got executive alignment, you've got subject matter experts within the organization and within a department, let's say, that are really knowledgeable about that use case. And it's just getting this alignment and building the team so that you're set up for success. And so just a few thoughts in terms of how we see partnership and accountability as we're working with our clients through these initiatives.
Awesome. Yeah, partnership and accountability, super important. Can't stress it enough. So I guess once you have, that aspects of the projects, I guess what now? Like, what comes next? How do we know what steps to follow? I guess there's a lot of questions with what comes next, but yeah, any thoughts there, Bernardo and Scott?
I think ensuring that Oh, go ahead,
Bernardo?
Scott.
Okay, great. I'll tackle this one first. So what comes next? So the identification of all that we've just discussed to this point in the webinar can be distilled down to really defining your success state, defining what you're looking to overcome or improve, identifying a budget. We did talk earlier about getting board alignment. We didn't talk about budget, and at least beginning to identify what is the capacity of the organization from a financial perspective to invoke this change. And so coming to the table with a budget in mind. Now, we strongly recommend that that be flexible, and I know that may sound like at times an impossible thing to do, but at least coming with a rough order of magnitude of to solve this problem, we believe that investing X dollars is going to produce a benefit for the organization. And so having the budget in mind. The other point I'll make, and then Bernardo, I'll let you pick up from this, is just internal approval internally to proceed with an initiative. Now, that doesn't lock you into actually making a decision, but we talked earlier about that buy-in, getting alignment, and then once you have that, then proceeding with identifying possible solutions in the market. And so having that in place before you engage with vendors is often very helpful, because it helps just keep momentum and really get you to a success state faster than if you were to first engage and then have to go back and work through your internal alignment and approval process. So if that is an option for you, it is certainly something that can help accelerate and just make the whole experience for your organization better.
Mm-hmm. And when
go ahead, Bernardo.
When we sorry about that. When we talk about budget, it's just it's really important to think about the cost to build it, and then the cost to operationally support. Right. Many times it's easy to focus, okay, this is what it's going to cost to build, and get raw on the build. But there's not an understanding of, yeah, I need a new headcount to be able to support this. I need a developer, or I need a database administrator, or I need an additional help desk person. Whatever those needs are, whatever that is, from a technology perspective, to operationally support. Also, the functional business unit should also look at what do they need to be able to operationally support, anchoring all that information in the business case at the beginning, even with directional information. You don't have to have it perfect in the beginning. It gets refined as you dive deeper into scope. But making sure that there's an awareness of both of those factors is really crucial, so that it's not technology goes live, the change goes live, and then IT's like, okay, I'm already wearing 5 hats. Now I need to wear another 3. It ensures that we are resourced appropriately to support whatever technology is being deployed.
Awesome. Thanks, Bernardo and Scott. So at this point, we're going to transition into a bit of a Q&A period for the next 5 minutes. So we do have a couple questions here floating in the chat. So the first one, there's one in a direct message here, and I do want to pair that with one of the questions in the chat as well. So can you tell us about your experience with introducing technology to orgs that aren't too technology savvy? And so I kind of want to pair that with, like, what does the time commitment look like from the client side, and what does that experience look like for clients who might not necessarily have that IT team?
Scott?
Bernardo, why don't I tackle that? It's a very, very good question. And so I would say the answer to that is when you think about, I mean, we've addressed prior to actually starting a project and you know, the work that goes on internally. So let me just address that first. I mean, that in some organizations, you know, can take as little as a number of weeks, but in many cases can take many, many months, and often is somewhat time to funding approvals and board approvals, or you know, grants that you're applying for to help financially with the project. But when we talk about an actual project, you know, implementing a solution, and in this case, I will speak a little bit to a Salesforce solution because that's what I'm familiar with. You know, there's a team within your organization, and there's a team with the partner or the vendor that you're working with. And you know, oftentimes it is well, not oftentimes, it's always required that there is a high degree of involvement from your team throughout the project. Now that does fluctuate throughout the project, and we certainly could speak to that in more detail outside of this conversation, but it's there absolutely is a requirement from the customer to participate throughout the project. You know your business, you know your systems, you know the challenges that you're looking to overcome. The partner that you work with is really only as capable at solving that as with the information that has been provided. So, you know, I think Bernardo had a great example, one I've not heard before, about you know, buying Microsoft Word and expecting that solution to complete his term paper. And I think that's a really good example, because the more time and the more attention that customers put to these projects, the better the outcome.
You do have two questions, but yeah, I'm just going to jump to the next question here. How do you go about establishing a vision with clients who may not fully understand what a Salesforce solution can look like?
Oh, I'm going to take this one because I was not a Salesforce Kool-Aid drinker. Y'all need to know that. That's why they hired me, because I was like, I had run a .NET shop. I was a VP in a software company, and actually personally went through the change of Salesforce. To me, was always just CRM. And the farther you get away from its core, the more expensive it is, and the more expensive it is to operationally support. And here I am working at Salesforce, handing out Kool-Aid, trying to baptize people in the Kool-Aid. When it's the business requirements. And when I say business requirements, you know, user stories, which is just what are the business problems that must be solved by this solution that we're looking to implement, whether small or large. And that speaks to itself in terms of requiring the technology to demonstrate whatever platform it is. Even, you know, Workday is responsible for a Workday implementation. It needs to demonstrate the capacity to actually solve those particular problems, not in a future state vaporware, anything that's not it's on the roadmap, vaporware. I just want to highlight that's vaporware. They need the solutions need to be able to clearly demonstrate that can actually solve those particular business challenges that have already been identified. The more time that you spend upfront doing your homework on those requirements, the more precise your budget's going to be, the more precise that your resource requirements from a people perspective, talent perspective will be identified, and things will go much, much smoother.
Awesome, Bernardo. Yeah, it really starts with the business need. You can jump to all the bells and whistles straight away, but it doesn't take away from the need to like really dive into what are my actual business requirements. Let's not talk about all these bells and whistles until we actually nail that down first. Yeah. Another question here from Norman Osman is, can you share your experience with getting internal buy-in and how to address the pushback, especially when it comes to the change in flow of someone's day-to-day work to ensure proper data entry contact management?
Sure. Well, Hua Ping, why don't I tackle this one? And Norman, great question. So you've asked a couple of parts of this question. So the first one is around internal buy-in. So we've shared some examples today about internal buy-in. I think Bernardo described it well in saying actually getting qualitative and quantitative measures defined. What is the reason for this? What are the benefits? And actually getting to those conclusions with the larger team. And at times it's a particular department, a siloed department that is trying to address a particular challenge and to invoke change maybe within the organization. And stepping outside of that may be challenging to get buy-in, but by bringing others into that discussion and sharing the ideas and the concerns that everybody has, you can establish some measures that will really help you define what success looks like. And in our experience, the more you can get that alignment, and I hate to overuse the word alignment. I find we use it so much within our business. But it is very impactful in terms of getting everybody in the organization that needs to participate in this on the same page and all pulling the rope in the same direction. So that was the first part. In terms of when you get pushback when it comes to the change in flow. So what I'm interpreting there is you've got end users that are actually going to be interacting with these new systems, and maybe they're familiar with a legacy system and they've been in the organization for many years, and they may not love change. The taking them on the journey of communicating the vision, communicating the story, is so much more impactful than not having them participate in building buy-in into the overall decision. And so something, just in terms of a technique that we've seen be successful is it's bringing in a larger audience to start getting their ideas on the table, refining those, and then going back to that larger audience and communicating the plan and the vision. So, but with that, Hua Ping, I'll pass it back to you because I know we're almost at time.
Yeah, I would. The very last question here, I've asked Bernardo if he can power through it in 1 minute. So what is the most important challenge or biggest challenge for organizations implementing a solution?
It's the people. The people is the most complex. Knowing who's going to be for, who's going to be against, how is it going to be perceived, how is the messaging going to be done? The technology is third. It's the people. People is the most difficult piece of any type of transformation. And so ensuring that there's that attention up front and also managing the expectations up front is very helpful to ensure that there's success later on.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernardo, for that final piece. I saw a comment in the chat, which was people process technology. That's something I learned in university, PPT, PowerPoint. But people process technology is the core to any technology project. So really thank you for that. And thank you, Bernardo. Thank you, Scott, for all of your comments there. And with that, I think we have answered all the questions. And I just want to say a huge thank you for everyone here who was able to join us today. And thank you, Bernardo, once again for joining us from salesforce.org and sharing your amazing insights here. As a reminder, as Matt just posted, we will be uploading this to the Belmar YouTube channel, and he posted a link there. Please follow our social media to stay updated for this event and any other future events that we will be hosting. And be safe, everyone. And thanks once again for joining us today.